Chcielibyśmy przedstawić kolejnego naszego historyka dzisiaj, który jest z nami. Jesteśmy dumni, że jest z nami i dziękujemy za to. Aniu.
We'd like to ask Dr. Ted Radzilowski of the Piast Institute, our Polonia historian, to say a few words, a few remarks specifically about Thaddeus Kosciuszko and the Blue Army.
Tylko kilka słów. It's been a long program and it's a very good one. It was a splendid presentation on the Blue Army by Dr. Lechowicz, and Henrietta's was very moving. So there's nothing we can add to the story of the Heller's Army as it's been presented here today. Their accomplishments, their valor, they're immortal. They'll live with us, and they're part of our story here in America, just as Thaddeus Kosciuszko was. And there's some remarkable convergence in those two stories. Kosciuszko came here as an immigrant with no great accomplishment in Poland. He was a student. He was an engineer. He suffered a tragic reverse in a love affair. And so he came to America. It was on his way that he confirmed his ideas about freedom and justice. And he came here and he lived it in the American Revolution. And then he was probably the first Polish American. The United States came into existence because he helped to create it. And he brought with him lessons in warfare. And most important of all, the idea that ordinary people can get together to rise up and defend their rights and freedom. It was a legacy he brought back to Poland, one that he gave to the world. And that's why he's so well remembered all over the world. People know Kosciuszko, and they knew him. Poets wrote marvelous poetry about him. People wrote novels about him. Very few people know that in the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the novel by Jules Verne, Captain Nemo, who is supposedly modeled on a Polish revolutionary, sits there in his office and he has a picture of Kosciuszko, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Kosciuszko is the inspiration for people for the last 2 centuries. And so he left America as an American. He was an American citizen in this new nation, and he went back to Poland. And he brought some of his resources from America and contributed to the land of his birth to fight for freedom. And so the people of the Blue Army, the men who volunteered, were doing some of the same things. They came here as immigrants. They didn't even come here as Poles because there was no Poland. And it was here in America, growing up in our neighborhoods, in my neighborhood, in Chicago and Buffalo, Rochester, South Bend, that they absorbed both the story of Kosciuszko, and look at how many of them were wearing rogativkas, That became popular right at the beginning of the 20th century among American Polonia. And they took those lessons along with their burning desire to free their homeland and went back. Kosciuszko may have invented the idea, because he was one of the first who came to the United States, even before Pulaski, the idea of for your freedom and ours. And now these new volunteers were going back, in a sense, repeating what Kosciuszko did for their freedom and ours, for the freedom of their homeland, their relatives, as well as the fight for world freedom, world justice. So they fought in France, they fought in Poland, and they established a remarkable record. And they were an example to us. As I said, I grew up in Hamtramck, so I saw all those posts. We knew those stories. We knew people who had served in the Blue Army. And they were heroes to us. Years later, and I don't know about others, well, I've talked to a number of people, and I think this is true, those of us who served in the military often thought about ourselves as Polish Americans serving in the American military, sometimes close to harm's way, and thinking, are we doing this again? Can we claim that tradition? Are we holding, as in Vietnam, where I was, are we holding the Eastern Gate again, as Poles had for 500 years, just as the people of the Blue Army did? They were a model for us. They gave a deep Polish context to our own American values. And so they're very important. And Kosciuszko started that tradition, and we celebrate today the 200th anniversary of his death, as well as celebrating the recruitment here of the Blue Army in the Detroit area. And these things fit together. They're not separate chapters and two different stories. They're all part of a single story. It's in part an American story, as well as a story of the continuation, the eternal story of Poland's fight for freedom and justice and the willingness of Poles to fight for others. So when we think of Kosciuszko, think of him starting a tradition that's certainly found in a very important home in the Blue Army and lives with us still. And we need to pass that on. Poles were always there. By the way, Polish Americans served as volunteers, the first 100,000 volunteers to the American Army in World War I. 40,000 of them were Poles. 40,000 out of the first 100,000 volunteers. And in World War II, Polish Americans served in greater numbers per capita than any other major ethnic group. I've studied this for several years in the census. So we have a tradition. And then these people came back. They didn't stay in Poland, they came back. And they reestablished themselves in America. And like Pani Nowakowska's father, and like so many others, they created a rich new community in America, and they contributed to our country. One of my favorite heroes of our local Polonia story is Thaddeus Majchrowicz was originally, he changed it to Machrowicz. He came back, he served in Halder's army, served in France. His brother was a sergeant in the American Army, in the Marines. He fought at Belleau Wood in France. But Tadeusz went instead to serve with the Blue Army. He came back, became a judge, a politician. He served the Polish community for many years as our congressman here. And then his closest friend, by the way, in the Congress was John F. Kennedy, was his neighbor. And so when Kennedy was elected president, one of the first things he did is he named Tadeusz Machrowicz federal judge for this area. And he served our community, the whole American community, with great distinction. He's remembered as one of the finest judges we've had here in the last century. So the Haller's Army, the Blue Army, their tradition is deeply embedded in our own community, and we need to keep it alive. We need to remind people where these values come from. And so it started with Kosciuszko, and it's been kept alive in our time by the Blue Army and others like them. And it's now our job to pass it on. Thank you.